Her husband died on a Wednesday. By Saturday, his family had already changed the locks on the business. Not grief. Not confusion. Saturday. And when Nora asked his brother Raymond why, Raymond looked at her the way people look at someone they have already decided is not part of the story anymore. He said, "We need to protect the assets." She had been married to Thomas for 19 years. She had worked the business alongside him for 11 of them. Her name was not on the paperwork. She was about to find out what that meant. To understand what Nora lost, you need to understand what she had. She married Thomas Kerrigan at 24 in a small ceremony in Winnipeg. He was 32. A third-generation family business, agricultural supply, modest but established, the kind of company that ran on reputation and personal relationships built over decades. Thomas was not a complicated man. He was steady. Reliable. He showed up. In 19 years of marriage, he never once forgot her birthday, and he never once raised his voice at their children. Nora had come into the marriage with a degree in business administration she barely used because the business needed her more than any employer did. She kept the accounts. She managed supplier relationships. She handled the administrative side of a company her father-in-law had built from nothing and her husband had inherited and grown. The Kerrigan family was the fabric of their community. Church on Sundays. Sponsored the local hockey team. Raymond, Thomas's older brother, was the kind of man who got elected to things. School boards. Agricultural committees. His voice carried. Nora had always understood that she married into something larger than just Thomas. She had made her peace with that. The in-laws were cordial. Not warm exactly, but reliable. Attendance at holidays. Small gifts at Christmas. A particular quality of distance that felt like respect rather than rejection. Raymond's wife Carol helped once with the books during a stretch when Nora was managing 2 sick children and a complicated supplier dispute simultaneously. Raymond said at the time, "We're all family here. What's Thomas's is ours. We look after each other." Nora had nodded. She thought he meant it as reassurance. Thomas had a heart attack at 51. No warning. No illness. Tuesday evening in the driveway. Nora was inside helping their youngest with homework when she heard the car door. Then nothing. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was already too late. The days after were a particular kind of blur that anyone who has survived sudden loss will recognize. Forms. Phone calls. Children who needed explanations she didn't have. A casserole from a neighbor she could not remember eating. Thomas's coat still on the hook by the door. The Kerrigans arrived in force. That part felt right. That part felt like family. Raymond organized the funeral arrangements with an efficiency that Nora was grateful for because she had nothing left to organize anything. His mother held Nora's hands at the graveside and wept. Nora wept too. That was Thursday. Saturday, the locks were changed on the business. She found out because she had driven over to pick up Thomas's personal items from the office, his reading glasses, a photograph of the children, a coffee mug she had given him years ago. The key didn't fit. She tried it twice. Raymond pulled up in his truck while she was still standing at the door. He said they needed to protect the assets during the transition. He said the estate would take time to sort out. He said she shouldn't worry. He said Thomas would have wanted the business protected. He said all of this while gently guiding her away from the front door. That was the first layer. In the weeks that followed, she began to understand the shape of what she was dealing with. The business accounts had been moved. Not emptied, moved. Into holding structures she hadn't known existed. Raymond explained it as standard business practice. Protection from creditors during estate proceedings. The family farmland, a portion of which Thomas had told her was to pass to their children, had been transferred 2 years earlier into a family trust she was not named in. Thomas had signed it. She found the document in a box of papers Raymond brought over, presented as estate paperwork she needed to review. He had handed her the box as though it contained only administrative details. It contained the proof of what had been arranged without her. That was the second layer. The third layer arrived 6 weeks later when the estate solicitor, the Kerrigan family solicitor, she realized only then, presented a proposed settlement. Her share of 19 years of marriage and 11 years of business contribution, the family home, which she already lived in, and a modest sum. The business. The farmland. The investment accounts Thomas had mentioned but never shown her. None of it. Raymond sat across from her at the solicitor's table and said, with genuine kindness in his voice, "Thomas would have wanted you and the children looked after. This does that." She looked at the number on the page. She looked at Raymond. She said she would need some time to consider. She drove home. She sat in the car in her own driveway for a long time after the engine went off. Her children were inside. Thomas's coat was still on the hook by the door. She had not been able to move it yet. She waited 3 weeks before she got her own solicitor. That is the decision she still turns over. 3 weeks. She tells herself she was grieving. She tells herself she didn't know yet what she didn't know. Both of those things are true. But during those 3 weeks, records she later needed were moved, organized, and structured in ways that cost her significant ground. She knows that now. She didn't know it then. What she knew then was that she was 43 years old, had not worked outside the family business in 11 years, and every person in her community was a Kerrigan connection. Her own solicitor, when she finally found one, a woman who drove out from Winnipeg, looked at the estate structure and went quiet for a moment before she spoke. She said, "How long have you known about the family trust?" Nora said, 6 weeks. The solicitor wrote something down. She said, "And the holding company the business was moved into?" Nora said she had not known about it until after Thomas died. The solicitor wrote something else down. Then she looked up and said, "We have a case. But I want you to understand that it is going to be slow and it is going to be uncomfortable in ways that will surprise you." Nora said she understood. She did not fully understand yet. The discomfort arrived from a direction she had not anticipated. In a small community, litigation against a family like the Kerrigans was not a private matter. It became the context through which people understood her. Not the grieving widow. Not Thomas Kerrigan's wife of 19 years. The woman suing the family. People did not stop being polite. Politeness was the point. The particular careful politeness of people who have decided you are difficult and are being very kind about it. Her daughter came home from school and asked why someone had said that Uncle Raymond was fighting for what belonged to Thomas. Nora said, "People don't always have full information." Her daughter said, "Is it true?" Nora looked at her daughter. She said, "We are going to be fine." Her daughter said, "That's not what I asked. I want to stop here and ask you something directly." Nora waited 3 weeks before she got her own representation. During those 3 weeks things happened that cost her in the settlement. She was grieving. She trusted people she had known for 19 years. She did not know what she did not know. But here's the question I keep coming back to. If you were in that driveway on Saturday, 4 days after your husband died, and someone changed the locks, would you have known immediately what that meant? Or would you have waited too? Because I think most people would have waited. I think the version of this story where she acts immediately and perfectly is not a real version. But knowing that doesn't change what the waiting cost. Leave a comment. Tell me what you would have done. 3 months into proceedings, Thomas's mother came to see Nora alone. Without Raymond. Without the solicitor. She knocked on the door on a Saturday afternoon and stood on the step holding a casserole dish, the same kind she had brought the week of the funeral. She said she was not there about the legal matters. She said she was there because she missed Thomas and she thought Nora probably did too, and she was not sure the two things needed to be at war with each other. They sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours. They talked about Thomas. The things he was like as a boy. A story Nora had never heard about him at 16, at a school dance, embarrassingly and endearingly out of his depth. For 2 hours the legal proceedings existed somewhere outside that kitchen. When Thomas's mother left, she held Nora's hand at the door for a moment. She said, "I am sorry for how this has gone. I want you to know that." She did not say she would intervene. She did not say Raymond was wrong. But she came. And she stayed. And Nora sat alone in the kitchen after she left and felt something loosen very slightly in her chest. Not forgiveness. Not resolution. Just the reminder that grief was genuinely shared. Even among people who were also fighting her. If this story is reaching something real for you, hit like and subscribe. These are the stories that don't usually get told out loud. Stay with me. Back to Nora. Her solicitor called on a Thursday morning with a specific request. She needed Nora to go through every piece of paper Thomas had ever brought home. Every document. Every file. Every envelope she might have set aside and not opened. The kind of search you do when you have stopped believing the other side has shown you everything. It took Nora 4 days. She found it on the 3rd day, in a filing cabinet in the basement that she had walked past 10,000 times without opening. A folder. Thomas's handwriting on the tab. Inside, copies of the trust documents. The holding company formation papers. Correspondence between Raymond and a solicitor dated 3 years before Thomas died. And a single handwritten note in Thomas's hand. Not addressed to anyone. Just a note. It said, Nora should be protected. Ask Raymond to make sure. He said he would. Raymond said he would. She sat on the basement floor for a long time with that note in her hand. Because that sentence changed everything she had been trying to understand about what had happened. Thomas had not structured things to exclude her. Thomas had trusted Raymond to protect her. And Raymond had understood that trust and used it to do the opposite. That was not careless. That was a specific choice made by a man who knew exactly what his brother believed he had arranged. Her solicitor, when Nora called her, went very quiet after she heard about the note. Then she said, "That note is going to matter." The legal strategy shifted that week. They were no longer arguing that Nora had been accidentally overlooked. They were arguing that she had been deliberately managed. There is a difference. And in estate litigation, that difference has weight. The formal hearing took place over 2 days. Raymond arrived both mornings in the same suit, accompanied by the family solicitor and a quality of composure that Nora had watched him deploy at school board meetings and agricultural committee hearings for 2 decades. He was very good at seeming reasonable. He was particularly good at seeming like the responsible one. Nora's solicitor presented the timeline first. The trust formation, 3 years before Thomas died. The holding company, 18 months before. The note in Thomas's handwriting. Raymond said he would. Then she presented the correspondence. The emails between Raymond and the family solicitor from that same 3-year period, during which time Raymond had positioned himself as the architect of an estate structure that systematically moved assets into vehicles Nora was not party to. The judge asked Raymond a direct question. She asked whether, at the time the family trust was formed, there had been any discussion with Thomas's wife about its structure or her position within it. Raymond said the details had been handled at the business level. The judge asked him to be more specific. He said the trust was a standard instrument for a business of that size. The judge looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at the correspondence. Then she asked whether Raymond had ever relayed to his brother that Nora had been named in any of the documents. Raymond said the family had understood Nora would be cared for through the estate process. The judge said, "That is not what I asked you." The room was very still after that. Raymond looked at his hands. He said he would need to consult his notes. His solicitor leaned toward him. Nora watched from across the room and felt nothing she had expected to feel. Not triumph. Not relief. Something colder and more exhausted than either. "I want to tell you something about how this ended that complicates the satisfying version." The judge found significant procedural issues with the estate structure. Raymond's management of the transition period was characterized as having prioritized family business interests over the spousal entitlements of Thomas's widow. A remediation process was ordered. Nora recovered substantially more than the original settlement proposed. Not everything she was arguably entitled to, but substantially more. Her solicitor thought they could push further. Another year of proceedings. Possibly 2. The outcome was not certain. Nora settled. Not because she gave up. Because her daughter had stopped sleeping well and her son had started avoiding the subject of school entirely, and she had been in active litigation for 14 months, and she was tired in a way that felt like it was using up something she could not get back. She took what the remediation produced. She signed the agreement. Her solicitor said she thought they could have gotten more. Nora said, "I know. Here's what I want to ask you. Was that the right call? Was settling, leaving money on the table to end it, strength or weakness? Because I have thought about this a long time and I still don't have a clean answer. I think she chose her children over the case. I think that is not the same as giving up. But I also think she would have taken more if it hadn't cost them something first. Tell me what you think. Leave a comment." Nora sold the family home 2 years later. Not because she had to. Because staying felt like living inside a version of her life that no longer fit. She bought a smaller house on the edge of town. She went back to work, not in agricultural supply, not in anything connected to the Kerrigan name. She worked for a small accounting firm in Winnipeg. Entry-level, technically. She did not mind. Thomas's mother called twice after the settlement. Once to say she had heard it was resolved. Once to say she hoped Nora and the children were well. She did not call again. Raymond sent a single email through his solicitor 3 months after the settlement closed. It said he hoped they could move forward without further difficulty. Nora read it once and did not reply. She kept Thomas's note. The one in his handwriting. The one that said Nora should be protected. Ask Raymond to make sure. He said he would. She kept it not to be angry at Thomas. He had trusted his brother. That was not stupidity. That was love, and love is not the same as good judgment. She kept it because it was the last thing Thomas had written about her. And because it told her something she had needed to know. He knew she would need protecting. He just trusted the wrong person to do it. If you have ever had someone speak for you after you were no longer in the room, and discovered later what they said, you already understand what Nora found in that basement filing cabinet. A note from someone who loved her. And the evidence of what happened to that love when someone else held it. Leave a comment below. Have you ever trusted someone to protect something important and found out later how they understood that responsibility? I read every single one. And if this story reached someone, share it. These are the stories that usually stay quiet. They don't have to.